episode of our podcast. I'm your host Tarun Moha, and today we will be discussing about bridging of short-term and long-term contracts under IFRS 17. Joining me today is Mr. Raman Malhotra, and actually with expertise in IFRS 17 for both short-term and long-term contracts. Hello, Mr. Raman. How are you?
I'm fine, Tarun. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Okay, so to move forward with our podcast, could you please start by explaining how IFRS 17 differs from short-term and long-term contracts?
So IFRS 17 is required for both short-term and long-term contracts. However, we use different measurement models. For long-term contracts, we use a cash flow projection-based approach called GMM model, which is a default approach suggested by the standard. However, it allows approximation of using UPR reserves under the approach of PAA, premium allocation approach. This is allowed for short-term contracts with coverage period less than 1 year, or if the long-term contracts have a reasonably close liability using the GMM and PAA approach, but this reasonably close is actually not defined clearly in the standard. You could say that it should be a mix of your entity level results and your portfolio level results, and the thresholds could be set both in terms of absolute and percentage basis.
So we have next with us is that how the GMM and PA models are different from each other.
So we basically divide the reserves in two categories in IFRS 17. The LRC and LIC, which is liability for remaining coverage, which is future, and liability for incurred coverage, which is the past. The differences majorly lie in the LRC section, where under GMM we are actually projecting the cash flows, whatever we are expecting in the future, and taking the present value of these cash flows on the best estimate basis. On the premium allocation approach, however, we are looking at the unearned premium approach. One of the key difference here is when we are looking at the unearned premium reserves, we are not including any risk adjustment on this. We are just looking at the unearned premium based on our best estimates. However, in the GMM approach, we are also allowing for risk adjustment to keep as a cushion of movement of our actual experience away from our best estimate liabilities.
Thank you, Aman, for explaining the difference between two models. But don't you think that all the contracts which are eligible for PA approach, it would be easier for them, the companies, to value under PA approach?
So unfortunately, that is not true. Basically, all the contracts which are eligible for PA approach should also have a GMM setup. This is primarily because of two reasons. First, for the long-term contracts which we are declaring that they are PA eligible at the outset, you need to do the PA eligibility test periodically. Every time there are new contracts issued, you need to do that eligibility test for them. Second, under PA approach, we are supposed to calculate the loss component as the excess of the reserves under GMM approach versus reserves under PA approach. However, an approximation of combined ratios is quite commonly used, which is advisable for short-term contracts but not for the long-term contracts using PA approach.
Could you please share what are the challenges faced by the companies writing short-term contracts due to these new requirements?
So companies writing short-term contracts do not have the setup to maintain bases required for the GMM valuations. This bases require the cash flow projection model, the policy level data, and long-term assumptions. A setup of these requirements are costly and time-consuming for such companies to develop, while the companies writing long-term contracts already had such systems in place.
So Aman, it seems that LRC requires a lot of work. What do you think about LIC?
Well, LIC uses the same approach of triangulation of claims under both the models. However, for longer term contracts, you would see that the LIC is fairly lower as compared to short term contracts. This is primarily due to the long term contracts having a shorter tail. One, because they have a lower claim underwriting requirement. Second, The claim in contracts such as life insurance is generally known. The timing is unknown. However, under short-term contracts or general insurance, you would see both of these factors are unknown. Also, under long-term contracts, when we are calculating IBNR reserves, a policy which has not been reported as a claim is already active in your books, which means you are already holding a reserve. So while calculating IBNR, you have to reduce these reserves from your projected claims, which reduces your IBNR fairly.
Thank you, Aman, for your valuable insights. That's all for today's episode. We hope that you find this discussion on IFRS 17 informative and insightful. Thank you.